All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kimberly Barrick, and I'm joined here with the beautiful Sarah Daggers. She's a libertarian and sex worker activist. Her experience reporting to the CDC with the Health Initiative Grant, military, and working with the DEA Task Force opened her eyes to a corrupt government and a broken system. Soon after joining the Libertarian Party and speaking out against the drug war, she became an advocate for sex workers. Sarah believes that, like the failed drug war, government involvement creates more victims and is a waste of taxpayer funds. She hopes to educate and empower others to speak in favor of the decriminalization of prostitution. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Kimberly.
It's nice to finally get to chat with you.
I know. It's like we're old friends and we've never actually talked. So
yeah. We have a lot of mutual friends, and so wonderful. Thank you for joining me. This is a subject I'm very passionate about, and definitely it's time that it's on the table. And so what I want to ask you maybe to start with is, can you expand on your background? As I understand it, were you a police officer?
I was a sheriff. I worked with the sheriff's department, and they had a grant that was in the DEA. So the DEA, they have a task force as well. So the task force, it comprises of sheriff's department, police department, state troopers, and that way they can kind of work together cohesively. At least they try to, and target. That way, if there's a person of special interest that's being looked at from the police department, the sheriff's department isn't going to go after that person. There's going to be that working together so that hopefully it can be done in a cohesive, responsible way, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. I was only there for a little while. I didn't do really what people think of the cool guy stuff, which is not cool at all now that I'm a libertarian and I've learned about victimless offenses and what harm that it actually does to society. But I was there for a short period of time. Before that, I was already in the military. I was in the National Guard. I worked during Katrina in New Orleans, which is where my family, my kids are born and raised in New Orleans. And before that, after Katrina, I went to Arkansas and I managed a not-for-profit at a hospital, and I was there for about 5 years. It was a grant, and it sort of was the beginning of my transition of seeing these programs don't work. It's a waste of government money. It's a waste of money, period. The idea of me going into it is I was helping people, and that I loved, and that's everything that I've ever done is because I wanted to help people. But as a libertarian, and when I see now is what we were doing is we're stealing money, basically. We were taking these funds and we weren't really using them in a effective way. I had a grant at my hospital. We had basically the same grant that was about 5 miles down the road through someone else. And so we were overlapping, and we were reporting to the CDC and the Department of Health these numbers, and these numbers, I see it. I know what I'm reporting is correct. I'm justifying my funds. They're doing the same thing, I assume. Easy to throw out numbers that aren't really accurate because you feel like you have to have high numbers so you can justify this $100,000 that you're getting every year. But then there's that overlap. If I'm saying 5 people did this and they're saying they are in the same zip code as I am and they're sending these same numbers, well, so now we have 10 for that zip code. You follow me? So the numbers were bad. We were both doing radio commercials, trying to get information out, trying to educate the public. It was an overlap. If we were both spending money on the same commercials, everybody knows buying in bulk, you can be more effective. So when I was with the DEA, the head of the agency at the time, he was actually with the DEA. He was over the region. and he's retired now, but we were talking, and he said, Sarah, it was just him and I, Sarah, if you really wanted to do something good for this country, you would legalize marijuana. It started making me think, which I had already gotten in that, I was already thinking down that road. But well, if you believe that, why are you enforcing these laws? Why are you celebrating an arrest for a person who is a victimless offender? Mm-hmm. Well, and of course he's saying legalize because he's thinking about the taxpayer dollar. Well, at the same moment, I was looking through some paperwork, and we had a grant, and it was a weed and seed grant. And when I was reading that grant and the mission statement, it was just basically street drugs. I believe it was a grant to go to the bicycle police that just, are in the basic community. And it included prostitution in there. I'm like, why are we doing something that's including prostitution? Like, that has nothing to do with the drugs. Why are, this is separate. Like, why are we receiving grant money for this? And so after I left, because once I decided what we were doing was wrong, I couldn't morally stay there. Didn't have another job, just quit. Gave my resignation, stayed. I think it was like a 3-day transition for me, really kind of coming to this was wrong and I needed to quit, even though I had been indoctrinated into this my entire life. Plus I needed a job. I had, bills to pay. And I left. It was about 3 days of not sleeping at night. And I left and I said, you know what, this is wrong. I'm gone. And I joined the Libertarian Party, became active in the party, still had a little bit of my indoctrination still attached to me. Was going to gun shows, talk about gun rights. And I had made a statement coming from the LGBT community. I had made a statement about we need more rainbows at the gun shows. And how about let's make a gay for guns or guns for gays? It's sort of off-cuff joke, but sort of serious as well. And somebody made the statement of, oh yeah, sure, that's the problem with libertarians. All y'all care about is pot and guns. Next thing you know, we're going to start talking about sex workers. We're going to talk about prostitutes. And I was like, why aren't we talking about prostitutes? And of course, some people are. There's a lot of great activists within the party. And I started looking up information and getting involved with them. And so this is the thing that I love to do. This is very important to me because there is a demographic in the community, and it comes in many sizes, shapes, colors, and forms, and these people matter. Whether you're in sex work because this is a choice that you make and you love it, or because you don't like it, it doesn't matter. The best way that we can effectively help people and save lives and decrease victims is by decriminalize sex work. And there's a lot of government propaganda out there right now that suggests otherwise. And so me and a lot of my friends were working together, and I appreciate you asking me the questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, and maybe we should, if you could help people understand the difference between legalization and decriminalization, and why decriminalization is the supported answer among sex workers as well, like is across the board.
Well, right, and it comes from sex workers. People are always like talking about we have to save sex workers. That's the narrative is saving sex workers. There's a suggestion that all sex workers are slaves basically, and that they don't actually want to be in that line of work, and that they're forced there, and nobody is in sex work. I actually saw somebody today that made the claim that 90% of all sex workers are forced into sex work. And I'm like, you don't know my people then. Because everyone I know, I have yet to meet somebody that just really hates their job and isn't there because they want to be. I'm not saying that there's not, because there are, obviously. I think that's really important for us to keep that in mind. The difference is with decriminalization, you're given complete autonomy, basically body autonomy. Legalization, we have legalization in some counties in Nevada. So with legalization, it's basically, it can come in different forms. The form that we know it in Nevada is that you have a brothel, like the Bunny Ranch, for instance, and you have certain amount of licenses that are put out. A person buys that license, open a brothel, and then if you are a provider and you want to work at that establishment, then you go through the rules and regulations that they have provided. Basically, what you're doing is you're having a pimp and a pimp. Mm-hmm. The government's your pimp, the brothel's your pimp.
Absolutely.
So, with decriminalization, we got rid of all that. You own your body, you set your hours, you set the rules, you make sure that you get the health checks, you vet your clients, the clients vet you. They decide if they want to use your service or not, which of course they can do that in the brothels as well, but they don't have as many options. They don't feel like they have the autonomy that they want as well. So all the way around, it makes the community safer. You don't have to have a building that the conservative Christian groups are uncomfortable with. You can work out of your home if you choose to. And you don't have all the licensing and taxation that you have with decriminalization. But you still have recourse if somebody does something violent toward you, if they rob you. You can still contact the police if you need to.
Right. And the way that it's set up now, the black market, it just drives everything underground. And, I saw a lot in LA, I saw a lot of women that barely spoke English, if any, and promised certain things, and then their money's just taken from them. No recourse. Like you were saying, no one to go tell, because the stigma attached to prostitution. So maybe when I hear sex work and then I hear prostitution, can you maybe give us a little insight into the difference there?
So sex work is a variety of things. You can have an escort, you can have prostitutes, which is the specific thing that I typically talk about. Mm-hmm. You have strippers, those in the porn industry, the phone chat lines, webcam, that is also sex work. So you have a whole host of anybody that's making money for exchange of sexual services of some type or another. Mm-hmm. That is considered a sex worker. You have a lot of people who are in that business who actually they don't consider themselves sex workers, even though other sex workers do. Mm-hmm. So, I don't call people sex workers unless they want to be called that. Mm-hmm. It's really up to the person. But when we talk about it, when people are talking about it, typically when somebody says it, you can always assume they're talking about prostitution. Those who are actually activists and are more involved, they understand that is a variety of things. So words matter. And that's the same with when we talk about legalization and decriminalization. A lot of people say, let's legalize it. And they mean the same thing, they think, but they don't always understand that there's a difference. We saw the same thing with marijuana, with cannabis, marijuana, cannabis. Those are words, right? They did that because they wanted to make cannabis look bad. And so these are things that the government has done with legalization and decriminalization. They've made these words to mean something really different and not exactly what you think that you're talking about. And semantics really matter. So it's smart to know who you're talking to and who's talking to you, and just try to take it on good faith that they're saying what you want them to say, or knowing that what they're talking about, or maybe they don't quite know. And I try not to get real upset when people say legalization. Sometimes I'll kindly correct them because we need to get on the same term, but that is exactly what sex workers want. And so what I was saying before, I'm sorry I got sidetracked, this is what sex workers want. We're always talking about wanting to save sex workers. This is what sex workers want. If there's a way to do harm reduction, who's the best person to ask?
Mm-hmm.
When you do an evaluation, you ask everybody, right? All the stakeholders. Well, all of these organizations are saying this is what's going to help sex workers, but they're not asking the sex workers.
Mm-hmm.
So decriminalization is what is going to reduce harm and make most of society happy.
Well, yeah, and again, we go to the stigma, and a lot of times it is, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're looking at people who they're arrested for a victimless crime, and to pay the fines, to just being away from family. It's very similar to what you're talking about with the drug war, where these families are, for a victimless crime, are torn apart, can't pay the fines, and they just never get out of a hole. And then they're even more stigmatized,
Right.
and, put down. And I was reading some statistics where, minorities are really targeted much more, and even in the drug war. And you look at the prison system, it's for profit. And these people are just, but the stigma attached to them. So then they have that on top of the fines, missing, their families torn apart. And then, I mean, we can go into the mental health issues, what comes up. So I work with humans moving through trauma with the horses, and I see it all the time where, just so traumatized. And it doesn't have to be that way.
No.
And so another thing I wanted to kind of lead into, I guess, with that is on the trafficking side. You said the numbers are being conflated.
Right. Absolutely.
So we have, and that's a big push right now. We're seeing it all in the media, trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and is Backpage still shut down?
I mean, Backpage is I believe up, but not the services it provided. No, I know it might be completely shut down. I know like Craigslist doesn't have the personal sections. A lot of that is down, and I believe that the founder of Backpage is in Arizona right now in house arrest at the moment.
Yeah.
And so see that's sort of the other thing too with the laws that have been created. We had in let me get the date right. It was in June, President Trump had signed into law a bill, the FOSFA, the Fighting Online Sex Trafficking Act, and Senate Bill Stop Enabling Sex Trafficking Act, SESNA, and that shut down Backpage, took out all the personal from Craigslist, and it also, secondary to that a lot of people don't know, there were pages that sex workers, that's how they use, and when I say sex work in this terminology, I'm talking about prostitutes mostly, use the internet to vet their clients. They had like a black page basically where they could, if the client was violent or did something, that they could list it so that sex workers after them could say, oh, this guy's bad news, we got to stay away from him.
Yeah.
And this is a way of protecting. This was a way of making sure that the transition between the provider and the client were as safe as possible. And so that's gone now. And we've actually seen statistics, which are hard to get. I'll be honest, they're hard to get because sex workers aren't safe to come out and talk about, this is what I do. This is led me into abuse. But statistics do show in the safe communities that people are talking. Sex workers aren't making as much money as they were, which is making them more likely to go into risky behavior and take risky clients. And they're being abused, raped, and murdered at an alarming rate right now. We saw just recently, last week in Detroit, a man, they've captured someone, and it is, I believe he was 32, homeless. They said that he might have some mental illness, but he was targeting specifically sex workers and drug users because they were easy targets for him. So, yeah, the crackdown on sex workers, when we're saying that they're the victims, it's fascinating to me how we jump from saying sex workers are victims to let's arrest them and make their lives harder. So yeah, I think Backpage is down right now. I haven't checked it out in a while.
Well, yeah, and I know some women that use Backpage, and they're consenting adults. They're very okay with what they do, and so of course I don't think anybody's like, yeah, decriminalize so that let's just ignore human trafficking. They're such different subjects. And so really, I don't, everybody's passionate. Let's keep your hands off the kids.
Yeah. But
let consenting adults be consenting adults in a business arrangement, because there's so much stigma attached to it. And, what people choose to do, consenting adults choose to do with their body, maybe just because you don't agree with it, and it goes against your moral, ethical beliefs, doesn't mean that you should be able to put that on other people who they're adults.
Right.
And so I'm glad that it's being talked about, of course, but then now it's sifting through all this so that we can have an intelligent conversation and support the idea and libertarian idea that, hey, self-responsibility, but it's your body. And so if you make a crappy decision, you just don't expect anybody to pick up the pieces for you and pay for it. Right. It's your decision. And so I was watching a show the other day, and have you heard of the Operation Overground Railroad?
Oh, I have heard of that.
Okay. So that's been coming on my radar quite a bit, and I actually had some guests that stayed that have some pretty close contacts there, and I've been researching, and then you hear about the NGOs that are really helping with this trafficking. But then I read about NGOs, and it's like they're just making money on immigration. So you get so much information that you're like, you think you want to be a part of something because you want to help, and then you find out that it's it's got its own dark side to it. So you're just kind of overwhelmed with the amount of information, because there's so many people out there that want to help and do the right thing and protect the children.
Right. So let's talk about the kids. Let's talk about the kids.
Yeah.
We decriminalize sex work. What happens? It doesn't become legal to have sex with kids.
Right.
It doesn't all of a sudden magically, when we say decriminalize sex work, that doesn't say, okay, well, we don't arrest people that are having sex with kids. That doesn't change. That's a law. It doesn't change people who are forced into sex in some sort of way. That's still illegal. We're not saying that we want to make bad things okay. It's actually saying, what it's saying is, we don't want to waste money on chasing after somebody who's doing this consensually.
Yes.
Which all sex work is consensual. If it's not consensual, it's not sex work. We don't want to waste money on chasing after someone who's a consensual sex worker or client, because then what? So you've wasted all that time and money and effort, not just arresting them, not just the sting operation. I read a couple of months ago a sting operation, 17 months that they watched a spa, a massage parlor, 17 months. And they ended up arresting everybody in there. But then they released them all because there was nothing there. Why are you watching a massage parlor for 17 months? If we decriminalize it, then we give people the access to get help if they need help. We keep the resources going for the people who do actually need help. All we're doing is saying, stop helping because you're hurting. You put more sunshine on it. You put sunshine on it and you can see it. You get more away from the dark corners. You kind of see the things that are in the light. You get away from hiding, because you're hiding so many people right now. We're able to put the sunshine on the people who are doing this because they want to do it, or because it's the best job that they have chosen for themselves, because it fits their lifestyle that they want, whatever their reason. And then you're also giving them the opportunity, if they decide that they want to change, if they want to go into something different, they don't have this label on them, and this time in prison, also a waste of money. It costs like $3,800 to arrest someone for this. So and then you can redirect resources to people who actually need it. And you want to talk about morals? I see absolutely nothing moral about wasting money on people, on arresting people and putting them in a cage because they're doing something that they decided was the best for their life. It's absolutely immoral to me to destroy these families, taking children out of the homes because their mother decided to do this, taking children out of the homes because their father decided to do this, separating families for who knows how long. And then there's that second level of it, talking about age, the massage parlors. You have this demographic of typically women who are at massage parlors. I've spoken to these women. I had one woman tell me, me and my people work in massage parlors or at nail salons typically because we have a language barrier that prevents us from being able to get really good work anywhere else. We do this, we enjoy doing this, and we're not having sex. But sometimes the police come in and they're determined in their head that this is what they're doing, and they really sometimes believe it. But now we're being put in a situation where if we're giving massages, we have to leave all the doors open, because if we don't, it looks like that we're doing something that we shouldn't be doing. And we're very prideful people. We don't want, most of us aren't doing that. We're just giving massages. And then they come in, they take all of our money, and they put us away. I had one girl, this is her telling me this. She says, I had one girl who was sitting in prison for over 6 months. She didn't know what to do. She didn't speak the language. And she would call me because I was her point of contact here in America, crying, not knowing what to do. we don't know who to ask for help. We don't know what to do. And the community doesn't seem to care about us because we have no real connection and ties with the American community. And I said, well, I care about you and we care about you. There were two of my friends were with me, and she's like, it's so nice to know, quoting her, it's nice to know Americans care about us. It's really nice. And it breaks my heart to know that these people in all of these different communities and in the cities and in suburban areas feel like that we don't care about them because they work in massage parlors and everybody has this joke going around about, oh yeah, you can go in there for a happy ending. It's not happening everywhere, but society and the propaganda that's being put out right now would tell you that it is. And if there are issues of sex trafficking and human trafficking, there's a difference. As human trafficking is that they're working under protest, basically, or blackmail or whatever, coercion of some sort. If we get rid of these laws and we make the process easier, that people who are in that situation can get help if they need it. If there's actual need for help, it opens up the conversation, it makes it easier to happen, and we can move forward from there and make the community a safer place.
Yeah, it opens up honest dialogue.
Right.
And that's so important. Again, consenting adults.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the whole decriminalization, consenting adults. So remove that from the equation, and then we can navigate the healing process, because just on the mental health side of things, separating families and then the stigma attached to it when, people get a job. Well, they've got a job. Mm-hmm. You just don't like it.
Right. And because you don't understand it too. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, they watch television and they see these young girls in their 20s, early 20s in fishnet stockings, and they think that that's what prostitute looks like. Well, prostitution actually looks like, it could look like me and you for all that, sitting at their house and meeting somebody on the internet. It can look like the guy next door, because men are also in prostitution. That it can look like your favorite drag queen. It can look like, because it can look like anything. There's a whole host. It can look like that 20-year-old in fishnet stockings too. Street prostitution, it is a thing. It's becoming less and less of a thing, though right now, because of the online push and focusing on providers and clients online and targeting, it's becoming more dangerous. But it is a thing on both ends, and so there's people don't understand what it looks like. They've never actually spoke to a sex worker before. They don't know that most sex workers love their job, and they don't understand that they provide a service. It's typically looks more like you're having a conversation with an old friend, and it's that connection, that human connection that's being made. You see a lot of people with disability, either they have a hard time, they're scared of going out in public because they have some phobias. They might have an amputation. There's a host of reasons that people don't feel like that they can get that connection with another person. And so sex workers provide a connection that, like what you were saying, with that mental, being able to heal and that process, that it really does help people, and it really is a service. Mm-hmm. And I would love for people to start understanding that this is a service. It's not just some, wham bam, that's it.
Yeah. And living in LA, I saw a lot. It was LA. And so I've seen it at all different levels. People that enjoy it, mm-hmm. People that it's for the money. A lot of times it's kind of a get in, get out sort of thing. So the shelf life in the industry doesn't seem to be very long for a good portion of the women that I knew. They find something, they make the money, whether it's putting themselves through school or a trade or, you know, whatever it is. So they're in and they're out. I think that for me, the hardest thing was to see, like the woman that you talked about with the language barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And once they're arrested, and like this woman for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, first off, just the trauma of that. And you know, there's a language barrier and you're in a jail cell 6
Mm-hmm.
months for a victimless crime.
Right.
And so the expense of drug war as well, just the overall expense to the taxpayer, like you were talking about, like it's so ridiculous. And I mean, everything, like to afford, like just more taxes, more this, and it's just like eventually it's like, stop, you can't maintain this.
Mm-mm.
And then they get out and there's no mental health service. So what's the option? To go right back into doing what they've done, and then they're arrested again.
Right.
And then, you know, then you just don't show up for court, and then you've got a failure to appear, and, you know, and you're just in complete survival mode. And when you live in that state of fear, that's when that healthy fight or flight in the brain shrinks. Your decision making decreases, foggy brain, unable to pay attention, not making very solid and grounded choices for yourself. You're in survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't do any of us on the planet any good. No.
I often say that I believe that desperation is one of the worst diseases out there. Desperation creates horrible decisions. Like what you were just saying. I mean, when you become desperate, that's all of those things which you were saying. I can't express it enough. I never want anyone I know to become desperate. One of the things with sex work is it is a way of people being able to get out of bad situations. Even if I believe it was Maggie McNeil, and I think you know Maggie. I believe it was her that said, you know, I've only known 2 people to ever be forced into sex work, and I hope I'm not misquoting the wrong person. She said, I've only known 2 people to ever be actually forced into sex work that I've met, and they use sex work to get out of that forced sex work.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, in regards to the massage parlor individuals, you know, the 6 months being in prison, you know, most Americans would know that that's against their constitutional rights to be in prison that long without representation and seeing a judge. But you're talking about a demographic that's not as familiar with our court procedures and knowing what resources that they have to use. So, you know, that creates a whole nother level, or being sent back to their country of origin. It can create a lot of barriers for them to come back to the U.S., separated from their family. We don't know what they've left, these people that are coming here. But those are so many, you know, that's creating a victim within a victim. If they are in that place because they've been forced into it, or, you know, because somebody's holding their passport or whatever, why would we want to create a victim that's already being victimized? So so then you've made that person even more desperate, and they are likely to be one that might not show up to court because they're scared, or because maybe they don't even understand. They don't really have anybody guiding them through the process. So why, exactly what you were saying, like, why should we want to create that mental health issue where now they go, oh, well, I'm in trouble, so now I have to do more of this, and it's risky behavior on top of that, and maybe they don't want to keep doing it. You know, there's a whole lot of maybes, but the absolute is that we should not be arresting men and women, anyone, for sex work for any reason. If they're not there because they want to be there, then we shouldn't be arresting them.
Yeah.
If they're there because they want to be there, we shouldn't be arresting them. Decriminalization across the board, that's the solution. That's going to reduce harm, and it's going to be able to help so many people along the way.
Yeah, and it's important, again, the stigma and having these kind of conversations. And look, if you're watching this and you don't agree with prostitution, okay, but the bigger picture of mental health and just the economics of it, it's in your best interest to look at this and take your moral judgment away from it and understand that this has been around. It's oldest profession. It's been around. Maybe we can do another show and we can go deeper into the whys of, how people get into it. And I'd love to interview some women that have been in or still in. I'd like to open up that conversation, because I think that when we put a face on this with women and men who are in this as well, then we can put a face on it.
Right.
Have a conversation, and for a minute, step back with your moral judgment and realize that just because you have a moral issue with it doesn't mean that we should be putting all these people in jail and arresting and causing just a way bigger problem than it needs to be. Again, we're talking about consenting adults. And once we can separate that, we can have a really productive conversation about human trafficking, sex trafficking. We can, because that's something that, of course, we all want to address. But let's have the consenting adults be consenting adults and quit tanking the system and mental health and otherwise. I had one of my friends, Carla, that I had asked people to, because we're not live right now, I'd asked people to maybe a question or two. And my friend Carla wanted to know, what can she do at a local level to help with this issue?
Oh my gosh, at a local level. So there's a lot of organizations out there, and I don't know what her area is, but for anybody. So let me pause real quick and just say, for even those who aren't involved in like a political party, I was really proud of. I'm with the Libertarian Party. I know I've mentioned it several times. And this is going to lead to her answer, or the answer to her question. The Libertarian Party just adopted, and I was crying. I was very happy about this. We put forward some language, and I think maybe 3 people voted against it, maybe 4. It was almost unanimous, over 1,000 people. The Libertarian Party supports the decriminalization of prostitution. We assert the right of consenting adults to provide sexual services to clients for compassion, and the right of clients to purchase sexual services from consenting sex workers. So when it comes to parties, political parties, this is a really good way that you can help and you can get involved. You don't have to be a libertarian. You could still get connected with your local Libertarian Party. If you don't have one in your county or parish, you can find one near there and maybe get connected with them and get involved. The same step with that is Norma Jean. I don't know if you know Norma Jean. She has created, this is all data, and it's backed up with links. You can find it online. It's prostitution, police, and politics.com. She has, this is all data. This is data from the FBI website. So we're not even sure, like, this is probably, the numbers are probably high, but this is the data right here. It says the talking points of what they're saying, and it breaks down the numbers as well. So she calls it do the math, which is appropriate. And it shows like the numbers It has burglary, motor vehicle theft, all the types of violent crime, and how many people were arrested that year. She has every year in here. It has prostitution, it has all of it. So you can compare numbers. So you can see where the violence is, what they're talking about. Because when they talk about sex trafficking, they're talking about consenting sex as well. They're talking about everyone. It's this umbrella of numbers that, so it really makes it hard for us to move through the muddy waters to figure out what the conversation is actually, what's being said and what's really being said. For instance, there was some data done when they decriminalized indoor prostitution in Rhode Island for a scope of years. And when the national average of rape was actually increasing nationally, but the years, and it was these years that were decriminalized, rape actually went down 31% in Rhode Island. It went right back up when they recriminalized it.
Interesting.
But the time of the 6 years, 8 years, they did the study and they looked at burglary, any kind of violent crime. Rape was the only thing that changed. It went down. So a lot of people would like to say, well, there's going to be more drugs, there's going to be more violence. Actually, less. Now, why? Was it because they had access to sex work? Was it because there's actually they might get in trouble because now providers have an avenue to get help? We don't know why, because we can't do a study and we can't do an evaluation to see why. I'm sure there's a host of reasons. But to help get the information, the real information, the numbers that are, these are from this is where they pull out all the data and say exactly what it actually is and know all of this information. I went to the AVN conference in Vegas, and I talked to the I'm looking for the paperwork so I can show it to you, but I might not have it right here. Oh yeah, I do. I gave them this information. It was a whole lot of information about what they're doing in the porn industry as well. Is, people in the porn industry, also sex workers, and why they're hurting other sex workers as well. 2 years ago, I was a part of a rally just before Mardi Gras, and they had gone after the strip clubs in New Orleans. And it was the week before Mardi Gras, where they're making the most money that they're going to make in the year. They shut down the club. They did it in the name of sex trafficking. Because if you're not 13 inches above on a stage, then you can't have your top off, or it's prostitution, basically. And so they're arresting people. They're closing down these clubs, costing them millions of dollars, shutting these places down, revoking their alcohol license, which can be difficult to get for a bar, especially one in New Orleans, because there's a lot of politics and black tape. So get to know this information. You can message her. You can message me on social media, on Facebook. I'll connect you to Norma Jean. You can go to the website that I was telling you about, prostitution, police, and politics.com. It's a long name, hard. I have to make sure I say the P's in the right order. You can go to SWAP, Sex Worker Outreach Project. There's a lot of, some people like some organizations, don't like others. There's Coyote. There's some other different organizations, but if you want to just get started with one of those larger organizations that are out there and kind of doing things, or if you want to message me and ask me directly how you want to get involved, I can connect you to some people that may be in your general area. I'm happy to help. Anything that's going to help get information out there, and where we can start talking to people. You can work on a campaign if you know somebody that's running for office and you want to talk to them and go, hey, you should really support this. If you want to watch legislation that's going on, until we get these laws gone and abolished and repealed, until we start really focusing on decriminalization, not legalization, but decriminalization, until we really get that going, it's going to be just all we can really do is fight, push back, and try to help make this world a prettier place for everyone. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, it looks like New York is going to be the first state there. I mean, it's on,
Right.
Right? Isn't that as I understand, New York, it looks like they're having the conversation there.
They're having a conversation there. There was another city that was also having a conversation. I didn't read the bill exactly. It looks like that it was actually more of a form of legalization. Yeah. And it's really hard with the media because the media doesn't understand what they're saying. You're really talking about these kids that are just out of high school and they get these press releases and they just take it as the gospel. That's why when people are convicted for crimes, I don't think I have yet to see one single press release that actually had all the accurate information in it. And you know what? That's another thing too. I really want to talk about when we have more time. If we care about these people so much and we're saving people, why are we putting their information out on the internet when they get arrested? I saw it boggles my mind. I'm so sorry. It just hit me. I'm like, why are we doing that? And morally, we talk about morals. Morally, we have an obligation to protect those. Mm-hmm. And never in the history of ever have people been innocent until proven guilty. Everyone's always guilty until proven innocent, and even then people still think they're guilty. But we're putting their pictures and all their public information. We have these blackmail websites that blackmail people and say, well, you have to pay me $500. It's extortion.
Absolutely.
You have to pay me $500 or I'm never going to take your stuff off, even if you were found innocent. We don't care. We just want your money. Just terrible, terrible things out there. There's so much stuff that we can do better. We really can. Even if people just absolutely can't stand the idea of sex work becoming legal, you got to say, really? I mean, come on. Let's really focus on the things that really matter. Educate people privately if you hate it. Give people some sort of other, throw a carrot out there. I mean, just something. But we cannot keep allowing to go down these roads of things that are illegal because morally it is against us, that are hurting everyone. We can't keep doing it. So I hope everybody gets involved, get educated, ask more questions. It's an uncomfortable conversation for some people. It's hard. It's a impossible conversation for some people because of fear of people coming after them. But we've got to have it. People's lives are on the line. We have to.
Absolutely, and if we don't, it just drives the underground black market. It's not going away. It's always been here. It's not going away. So having the conversations, hey, let's just make it, again, consenting adults. Let them be consenting adults, and then we can deal with the other issues. Mm-hmm. Well, really nice talking to you, Sarah, and I'd love to do this again. And if you know of anyone that would like to have a roundtable discussion that either has been or is in the industry, I'd love to keep this conversation going. And I really appreciate your voice, Sarah, and just you taking a stand the way you did to do the right thing. I call that true north, and you're living your true north. And I would like to also say congratulations on your your new Sacred Union. You're glowing, and it was beautiful. I love the picture of you and Vermin Supreme. That was you walking in. That was just beautiful, and so congratulations. And I'll download this. We'll share it. Please like it. It's going to be on Brighton 4343 on YouTube. And I'll get some links that Sarah mentioned in the description. And is Facebook the best place to contact you?
Facebook is good. I have a Twitter account, or you can email me, Stuart S1776 at gmail.com.
Okay. Well, I look forward to, another discussion, or several, or as many, just to keep this going, keep the conversation going. And again, I really appreciate you, and you have a beautiful day, and we'll talk soon.
You as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, bye.
Okay, let's